Welcome in everyone to the SEPRO Land Simplify Your PGR Program webinar. My name is Eric Begitsky. I'm the Technical Development Manager with SEPRO, and really excited to have everybody in today. We're joined by two fantastic superintendents on the webinar today. Very honored to have them as part of the team today. Dan Grogan with the Sagamore Club in Indiana, and Jared Stanek at the Toscana Country Club out in California. So thank you so much, guys, and appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, quick rundown of the agenda today before we get started here. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kyle Briscoe, who's our Senior Research Manager with SEPRO Land, and he's going to discuss, kind of the thought process behind building a PGR program. What does that look like? How do we utilize the tools that we have currently to meet the objectives of your course and what you're looking for? He'll go into a little bit of detail on our PGRs at SEPRO, Legacy, Cutlass, Musketeer, how it go, in terms of rates, reapplication intervals, things like that, how to fit those into a program to, again, meet your specific objectives. We'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that we have available on our website to help assist you in determining your PGR program, and talk a little bit about current offers and things like that. And then once we get through with Kyle's portion, we're going to turn it over to a little bit of a panel discussion with our two guests, our two superintendents. They're going to be able to give some real-world examples of how they utilize PGRs and some of their experiences that they've had with that. I'm going to remind everyone, if you do have questions that come up during the webinar today, please use the Q&A function within Zoom, and it'll relay to one of us on the team here, and we'll be able to get those questions into our panelists or to Kyle or whoever. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kyle Briscoe.
I appreciate it, Eric. I'll spend about the first 30 minutes, as Eric mentioned, going over first PGRs just in general. I think there are a lot of misconceptions. I think there's a lot of maybe not a whole lot of thought put into PGRs. And obviously, SEPRO has 3 different PGR products, and I think they fit certain scenarios. And I know it can get confusing out there in the PGR landscape. So what I'm going to try to do to start is simplify it, and simplify it really into what are PGRs, and then after I explain that, how they can be used in certain scenarios to build programs to achieve the desired results. So as a start, what we're going to talk about is Class A and Class B. There's 5 different classes. There's some herbicides like glyphosate falls in, but we're going to talk about Class A and Class B. So the Class A and Class B PGRs are the ones that Cutlass, Legacy, Cutlass, Trim It, Primo, the straight goods, and new straight goods products. They're definitely the most widely used PGR class in turf. They are all regulate or suppress growth by inhibiting gibberellic acid or GA biosynthesis. And essentially what that does, and inhibiting the GA biosynthesis, is it reduces cell elongation, and shoot elongation if we're talking about ornamentals. But effectively what that results in is growth suppression, which means less trimming and less mowing required. So to break it down just visually on this slide, when I say cell elongation, you're looking at 2 plant cells here on the left, which would be untreated. You can see the little chloroplast inside. Then you treat, and then you have the same 2 cells on the right. So essentially what you've done, and people associate a lot of times with PGRs not only growth suppression, but color enhancement. And the reason for that is you've basically taken that cell and you've shrunken it down. So basically you have the same number of chloroplasts, but it's a smaller unit area, and that's why you get the darker green color than you get, say, with the untreated on the left. So certainly, definitely the opportunity to not improve from a less mowing, less clipping, less blowing standpoint, but also a visual enhancement in terms of both color and quality, which I'll go into as well. Now, to get into the Class A and Class B PGR products for turf. So Class A PGR would be they're called late GA biosynthesis inhibitors. It's just where they act in the GA biosynthesis pathway. Trinexapac ethyl and prohexadione calcium, or Primo and Anu, as the most common trade names. As I mentioned, late GA inhibitor. They are all foliar absorption, which is very important as I get into talking about some of the combination. Definitely growth suppression, number one, by far and away. These products are used for growth suppression. Certainly do bring something to the color and quality. And then in terms of POA maintenance, POA suppression, not getting much out of TE, Trinexapac, or Primo, but you are getting a little bit out of Anu, depending on the rate. Moving into the Class B products. So the Class B would be your early GA inhibitors. That would be Cutlass, which is the active ingredient fliprimidol, Trimit, active ingredient paclobutrazol. These are root absorbed. So as I mentioned, the Class A PGRs are foliar absorbed. Class B PGRs are root absorbed. Mainly used for POA suppression. I'll talk through the POA suppression part, building POA suppression programs with PGRs, as well as growth suppression, and then certainly your color and quality enhancement. So a little bit different in terms of how you can layer in if we're spraying straight goods products, Class A versus Class B PGRs. So just briefly touch on the product that SEPRO sells, Cutlass. So it comes in two formulations, Cutlass MEC, which is a liquid, and 50W. You can see the jug versus the drum there on the right. Again, the active ingredient is fliprimidol. It's Class B PGR, early GA inhibitor. MEC is 1.3 pound fliprimidol per gallon. 50W is a half pound. Highlights of Cutlass in general, no matter if you're spraying the liquid or the dry formulation, it's not going to inhibit lateral spread. You're going to get a very significant color enhancement. And then actually, fliprimidol is a cousin of DMI fungicides, and so you do get dollar spot suppression. It is on the Cutlass label when you are start to integrate Cutlass into your PGR program. So as I mentioned, turf color, if you look at the two Class B PGR side by side with Cutlass on the left, Trimit on the right, in this scenario, everyone that's sprayed Trimit, especially on cool season, say bent grass or an overspray on a Kentucky bluegrass, know that you can get some bronzing with Trimit. This happens to be 8 ounces of 50W on the left. You can see the color difference, and 16 ounces of Trimit on the right. And if anybody's wondering about comparative rates with the two Cutlass formulations, I've got it here. Basically, all you do is take the liquid in terms of fluid ounces and divide it by 3, and you have dry ounces, or vice versa. You can take the dry ounces times 3, and you get the liquid. Moving into the lateral regrowth, which I touched on again, the top two photos are Cutlass alone, kind of a mid-rate and a high rate. With creeping bent grass, this is 2 weeks after the third application, so this is a standard PGR program. This was a creeping bent grass fairway. The applications were made on a 21-day interval. You can see the difference between Cutlass on the top and Trimit on the bottom, no matter if we're talking about mid rates or max label rates in this scenario, where the Cutlass is not inhibiting lateral spread relative to what the Trimit is doing. And again, for the warm season folks on the call, same deal. This happens to be a 419 fairway. Again, 21-day, 3-week application interval. And this one is 3 weeks after, I believe, the second application. Obviously, you've got 25 ounces of Cutlass in the middle. You've got untreated on the left, and you've got 16 ounces of Trimit on the right. Just showing the lack of inhibition in terms of, if you spray Cutlass, you don't have to worry about those divots filling in with that lateral regrowth. All right, moving into the Class A plus Class B. So these would be the premixed products, which SEPRO is the only manufacturer that has premixed PGRs on the market. The first one we'll talk about is Legacy. Legacy is a combination of fliprimidol and Trinexapac ethyl. So it's a combination of Cutlass and Primo. So you've got one early, so one Class B and one Class B early GA inhibitor, one Class A, and the TE being the late GA inhibitor. The bigger key to this in terms of legacy is that second bullet point. You've got foliar absorption and you've got root absorption. And really what that leads to when you're talking about commercial applications or applications in the field is you get enhanced growth suppression, but you get less rebound. Everyone that's sprayed Primo, especially fairways, and it gets wet, and all of a sudden the Primo runs out and the grass blows up. But the legacy does, having the fliprimidol in there, and you're getting that root uptake from the soil, is you get a delayed rebound response, and I'll show that in a figure here coming up. But the other thing with legacy, again, you get an enhancement of color and quality over what you would say with Primo alone. You do get some POA suppression because you do have a little bit of fliprimidol in there. And what we see is a more uniform regulation of mixed turf species. So if you've got a mixed stand, rather than regulating some species really well and not regulating others very well, and so you kind of get this unevenness. With legacy, you can kind of even things out a little bit better than just using a single PGR product. The second Class A, Class B, or the pre-mixed PGR products I talk about is Musketeer. Musketeer is a three-way pre-mix. So it's got fliprimidol, it's got paclobutrazol, and it's got trinexpacethyl. So it's got Cutlass, it's got Trimit, and it's got Primo in it. So you've got your two early and we're one late G inhibitor, your two Class Bs, one Class A. Again, you get the foliar and the root absorption. You do get growth suppression with less rebound, but probably more important, I probably should move this up to number one there on the right side, is the POA suppression. So since you have the two Class B products, Class Bs are more or less and known for, hey, well, let's put them in there when we want some POA suppression. Well, with the fliprimidol paclo combination, you get very, very good POA suppression. Certainly going to get the color and quality enhancement, and then you get the uniform regulation just like you do with Legacy. So just to give you an idea of what the ratio of the three active ingredients are, at 18 ounces of Musketeer, which is a kind of like a standard, if you will, big grass fairway rate, you're looking at roughly 6 ounces of Cutlass, 4 ounces of Trimit, and 2 ounces of Primo. That's the way it breaks down at 18 ounces of Musketeer. Just a touch, if you advance, please, Brock, we'll touch on Legacy just a little bit more in depth. As I mentioned, the two active ingredients, you've got your fliprimidol, you've got your trinexpacethyl, so you've got your Cutlass, and you got your Primo. You've got your different areas of uptake. You've got your foliar uptake with the Primo going into the foliar, going into those leaf blades fairly quickly. You've got the fliprimidol that's going to be watered in. Often a question with both Legacy and Musketeer is, how long do I need to wait to water in? The data suggests that as long as you wait a couple hours, the majority of that Primo is going to get in the turf. You're feel free to water, or if you want to let it sit out there all day and water at night, that works too. Again, the consistent growth regulation reduces rebound, doesn't inhibit lateral growth. We're not after just super lockdown with Legacy. We are after even growth suppression and maintaining a lack of rebound as you come in and out of those growth suppression periods. So as I mentioned, just kind of a graphical of what rebound looks like. Everybody knows, you're baling hay, right? Which is rebound coming out of a PGR program. So this happens to be a creeping bentgrass fairway showing percent growth suppression. So that's what the lines are showing. Percent, anything below the gray line means that the turf is regulated. It's growing less than the untreated. The red asterisks denote the application. So in this scenario, there was 3 applications. And then you've got obviously your days there on the x-axis going from 0 to 115 days. So we're making applications roughly every 3 weeks, 3 weeks to a month in this scenario. The blue line is Legacy. I had 15 ounces, Primo, 12 ounces. In the green line, so after the first application, you're getting pretty similar growth suppression. And then the lines start to separate. But more importantly, when we're talking about rebound, is what happens on the back end. What happens when either you can't get back into spray at either that 21 or 28 day interval, what you're spraying on, because it gets wet, or maybe you're going into an aerification or something, some sort of cultural practices, and you're just not able to, or you can't spray the PGR. What's that turf do? Well, largely, and people are well aware of this with Primo, is that green line is it shoots up past the untreated. So it's truly a rebound where the growth is faster than the untreated. Where Legacy, the line comes up. There's a rebound, but it's not a rebound to the extent that you see with just Primo alone. So that's that kind of delayed lack of rebound. And if you flip to the next one, Brock, in terms of certainly with Bermuda grass, I've seen it with bent grass as well. Really, what it comes down to is better color, better quality. But when you get in those scenarios, especially when you can't get a mower on it, it's going to be reduced scalping due to reduced rebound kind of late in that growth suppression period. So you can see the photos here. You've got untreated on the left, that 12 ounces of Primo in the center, and then your 15 ounces of Legacy on the right. And this is 4 weeks after the final application. All right, I mentioned the other product, the other premix PGR product that SEPRO has is Musketeer. Musketeer probably of all the PGRs is probably the most confusing on the surface for most folks. They say, "Wow, 3 active ingredients. I don't even know what to do with this." I like to simplify it in terms of what it does relative to the 2 other products that we sell, being Cutlass and Legacy. What I call it is I call it the best of both worlds. This would be a cool season mainly opportunity with Musketeer. But when I say best of both worlds, Cutlass, for example, is very, very good even at lower rates at suppressing POA. Not so great at suppressing cool season turf growth. Does an okay job, but certainly there are better regulators out there in terms of growth suppression. Legacy, on the other hand, is very, very good at suppressing the growth of the turf, but it doesn't have a whole lot of fluprimadol in it. So the POA suppression, you don't get as much POA suppression as you do with Cutlass. Now with Musketeer, and again, remember I said there was both fluprimadol and paclobutrazol in there. So you're going to get, even at lower rates, you're going to get enhanced POA suppression similar to Cutlass. But considering you've got Primo in there as well, you also get very good turf growth suppression. So when I say best of both worlds, if you want to, from a cool season scenario, you kind of want to marry the best attributes of Cutlass and Legacy together in one jug is Musketeer. The other thing about it, given that it doesn't have a whole lot of Paclo in it, safer than trim it by itself. Your risk of bronzing, especially when you get in those cool weather scenarios, isn't nearly as high. This is a commercial PGR comparison. This is some work that I did with Bill Kreuzer about 3 or 4 years ago up at his 9-hole there up in Lincoln on creeping bent grass greens. And essentially what we wanted to look at, we had a Cutlass and a new, looking at Cutlass and new compared to Trim and a new compared to Musketeer. It was a growing degree day. It was based all on the Greenkeeper app. And these applications started in the summer. He started at low rates and he ramped them up. But by the time I was there and I took these photos in August, he had made several applications and he had already made it to max label rates of all the products. So I think it shows a very good comparison of, and there's data on the next slide. You see that kind of bronzing. If you flip it back just real quick, Brock, if you see that bronzing with the trim and a new, I mean, that's just a pretty consistent high rates of trim and a new. You're going to see that kind of copperish color. Some people like to see it. On the other hand, Musketeer color quality on a much different level than what you got with trim and a new. So now if you flip forward and we look at the turf quality data, as I mentioned, these trials started in the summer. And basically what the figure on the left shows is the Musketeer is the green line, the Cutlass Anew is the red line, and then the blue line is the Trim Anew. So after the first couple applications, what do you notice is that solid black line, the trimetinu drops below. And that's really, I mean, you saw it in the previous slide in the photo. I mean, it's that bronzing. It just doesn't. It looks a little bit off relative to what we saw from either Musketeer or Cutlass Anew. And if you look at the figure on the right with the bars, and again, we're looking at turf quality here at the kind of crossed, if you will, if you average all the turf quality ratings across that July, August into early September period, it actually the treatments separate out significantly, where Musketeer had better quality than Cutlass Anew, which had better quality than Trimming Anew. From a clipping growth suppression standpoint, Trimming Anew and Cutlass Anew were very similar, and they were providing more growth suppression than Musketeer by itself. All right, so just that was the background, as I mentioned, on PGRs, on SEPRO's PGR products, on what Class A's can do, what Class B's can do, and then we're going to start talking about how to build PGR programs. So when I'm talking to folks about PGR programs, rather than saying, "Hey, you know, what do you want to do?" or "What have you been doing?" it's what are your objectives? You want growth suppression, you want POA suppression. I mean, all these different things, whether we're talking about cool season or warm season, don't want to inhibit lateral regrowth. Hey, it comes down to these 5 questions. What turf species? What's the height of cut / playing surface? How much POA do you want to suppress the POA? And then ultimately, if it's just a turf growth suppression standpoint, how much growth suppression do I want? So if you figure out the objectives, then you can start working on building these programs. So let's just say that the objective, one of the objectives, is suppress POA in cool season turf. So as I mentioned, Class Bs, so Cutlass or Trim are the most effective. You've obviously got your Class B in Legacy and Musketeer as well, with Musketeer being a little bit more aggressive than Legacy. And essentially what Class Bs do in terms of POA growth suppression is they're regulating the POA growth more than, say, the bent grass growth in this scenario. You can see that in the photo on the bottom right. So when you get super aggressive in those, and managing cool season species with POA, you get super aggressive, you can sink that POA out. It causes unevenness. If you do it correctly with the correct rates, you can very slowly transition to less POA without having a lot of unevenness in that turf surface. So I say at that bottom bullet, season-long programs, it depends on how aggressive you want to get, 10, 20% to 80% reduction, depending on what rates. Just to give a kind of a visual of what the different PGRs look like, and again, this is obviously a greenhouse study, but you've got untreated, top left, bottom left is primo. So that your only true standalone Class A in this test. All the products either that are Class B standalone, which would be your Cutlass or your Trimmet, or that have Class Bs in them, Legacy and Musketeer, are very effectively regulating POA in terms of that POA growth. So as I mentioned, what it does in terms of the PGR regulating that POA growth more than desirable turf, then that allows desirable turf, for example, creeping bent grass to basically smother out those POA plants, assuming that you're keeping on a standard PGR program. So that's just a visual of what it does to the POA plant relative to, say, just spraying primo alone. All right, you take this to the field. This happens to be a trial out of Purdue. Dr. Cale Bigelow that ran a couple years ago. This is creeping bentgrass fairway. And this became effectively an 18-month to a 2-year study. We're looking at POA annual density. And I have a red line between June the 30th of 2022 and April the 11th of 2023. The reason I have a red line there is because everything to the left, we had been making applications. So we made applications from May the 4th of 2022 on a 3-week interval all the way until October. Obviously, when you come into the spring, we're not spraying PGRs first thing, but what we decided to do is continue to evaluate the POA density and see how much POA comes back. You can see all the lines, even the untreated, are trending down until you get to that red line, and then things start to trend up or potentially continue to trend down depending on what the products are. So I've got 2 circles at that last rating date, which is May the 3rd. And you've got the light blue line and the green line, which is Primo alone and Anu alone. And that's 8 ounces of dry Anu. So that's the WDG. And then I've got the bottom circle, which is the yellow line's Musketeer. The kind of reddish line there is a higher rate Cutlass, 24 ounces Cutlass, 4 ounces of New. And then you've got your orange, which is your higher rate of Musketeer, or excuse me, of Cutlass MEC at 36 ounces. So the takeaway here is when you have the more Class B that you can put in that system the year before, because it is soil uptake, the better the POA suppression is even going to be the following year. So we would start this PGR program again probably at May the 3rd. And if we would be starting with very little POA, 10-15% in those bottom 3 treatments, whereas we would be starting with more POA than we had to start 2022 if we just ran Class A's. And that's the whole point, is if you're going to effectively manage POA with a PGR program, and you can even see carryover into the next year, you've got to have Class Bs, whether that's a pre-mixed product like Legacy and Musketeer, or that's mixing your own with Cutlass, Cutlass and Trim It. But you've got to have Class Bs to have it in the soil to continue that POA regulation from year to year. All right. So this is a relatively new concept. Thinking about, as I talk with folks on what they want to do, what their objectives, and then how to design programs. And I certainly understand there are some people that love the Greenkeeper growing degree days, but quite honestly, a lot of people that I talk to can't get out and spray just on random intervals. They want to spray, for example, with this program on a 14-day interval. So how do you maintain either POA suppression or turf growth suppression? How do you maintain that through the season, right? When it's going to get warmer and the PGR is going to metabolize faster. And so what I came up with is basically using the nighttime low air temperatures. So if you look at the early spring applications, in this case, in a creeping bentgrass putting green, begin application 2 weeks after the last Primo proxy, and or when low temperatures are consistently around 45. If you start pushing below 45, your risk of bronzing goes up significantly. And you can do it, but you're going to have to live with some bronzing. Now, if you wait till you get to 40, your nighttime lows, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about forecasted nighttime lows for the first week or so after you're going to make the application. So in this scenario, it would be 6 ounces of Cutlass and then 2 ounces of a new liquid. This would maintain on a 2-week interval. So you flip to late spring. All right, so what happens when the nighttime air temperatures go up? You've got to go up on your rates. Typically, for every 10 degrees in nighttime air temperature, and I'm talking about degrees Fahrenheit here, you want to increase roughly 30%. So in this scenario, your Cutlass goes to 8 ounces, your new liquid goes to 3 ounces. Again, we're maintaining the 2-week air interval. As you move into summer, you're going to go up another 30% when you get to those low air temperatures of 65. Now, if you're in a territory that you don't ever get past 55, 60, you can probably maintain a rate around 8 and 3 or 9 and 4, somewhere in there. But it's certainly Midwest transition zone, and those high air temperatures are getting 80, 85, 90, and your lows are definitely 65, 70. You're going to have to increase your rates. In this scenario, you're going to 12 ounces of Cutlass and 4 ounces of New. Now, on the flip side, after you get through summer and you get back to fall, what happens to the nighttime air temperatures? They cool down. You're at risk of bronzing if you go too high in the fall as well. Not as high because the turf's already conditioned to the PGRs, but you are at risk. So when you go to 55, you want to drop those rates back down. You're still getting POA suppression. You've still got your cutlets. You're getting a little POA suppression out of the new as well. And then you want to target your final application when your forecasted low temperatures are around 45. So essentially, you've started at low temperatures of 45 and you've ended at low temperatures at 45. All right, I'll touch briefly on growth suppression because I think it's probably the most well understood sort of with PGR. So I showed the POA photos earlier. This happens to be perennial ryegrass. What it does, what PGRs do. They're gonna increase density. They're gonna increase color some more than others relative to just getting all leggy like the photo on the right. Now, there's only one key point that I want to make on the growth suppression piece. I think it's on the next slide, Brock. But I just spoke to it when I was talking through the POA program. And if you take anything away from this whole webinar or my little piece of this webinar, it's this in red. Consistent growth suppression during the season requires either increasing PGR rates or decreasing application intervals as air temperatures increase. And you could really put nighttime air temperatures, but if you look at the growing degree day model, it's all built off air temperatures, right? But what the growing degree day model does is, yeah, rates increase a little bit, but largely intervals decrease. With the programs that I put together, if you want to spread greens on a 2-week interval, I'm going to put you on rates, and you're going to increase those rates as the nighttime lows go up. If you're on fairways and you want to spray a 3-week interval. So basically, the only thing you really got to understand is, hey, I can start low, but as those nighttime lows start to creep up, I've got to increase the rates to maintain the same amount of growth suppression throughout the season.
Hey, Kyle. Couple questions come in, and one came in just a little earlier. Just didn't want to interrupt you, but which product would you recommend for 3 weeks of growth regulation in bent POA fairways?
Legacy. Now there's again caveats, and we can talk about we'll talk about the PGR Finder tool here in a little bit. But the first question I would ask is, what's your objective? Okay, growth suppression. Do you want to decrease POA over time? Do you not care if you want to maintain the POA at the same level? Because it varies. Because you could also use Musketeer in that scenario, but just off the cuff, growth suppression, bent grass fairways, it's legacy.
Appreciate that. Can I add additional Primo to my legacy and/or Musketeer during high growth rate periods in the summer months?
Absolutely, I would encourage it. I think that, and it depends again on how much POA you have. Increase it. Certainly understand increasing either the legacy or the Musketeer rate's going to increase that amount of Class B in there, whether it's Paclol or Fluprimadol. And maybe you don't want that for your POA in the summer, but your bent's growing crazy. Yeah, go ahead and spike it with Primo. What I'll say is you'll probably have to work it out, 2 ounces at a time to figure out what works the best, but make that recommendation all the time.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 more, on the growth suppression. So I'll flip to a warm season scenario. I think I've talked a lot about cool season, specifically bent grass, and there's an extra layer in there, obviously with POA management and bent grass. For my example growth suppression program, I'm going to use a 419 Bermuda grass fairway. Again, the program is set up exactly the same as what I talked about with the POA suppression program. However, obviously the product's different because we're talking about legacy. We're talking about different application intervals. So we're talking about 3-week application interval. And more importantly, or most importantly, I should say, is we're talking about different air temperatures with warm season than cool season. So where I said, when I was talking about on cool season with the POA program starting at 45, we're starting at 55 nighttime lows on your Bermuda grass, or really any of your warm season turf. 12 ounces of legacy would be your first application. Sequential 3-week application, 21-day application interval. certainly understanding that you can, especially in the South, we can warm up quick to 65. Would love to see a couple applications of 12 ounces go down before you bump to 16. But if it goes from 12 to 16, you can make that work as well. Again, the air temperatures are really going to drive more than anything what kind of visual response the turf gives you. If you start low, you're going to condition the turf to the PGR. It's going to understand how to metabolize that. You just don't want to go too high with the PGR when the air temperatures are too low, or that's where you get the bronzing. So again, nighttime lows bump up to 65, bump that rate 30%. You're at 16 ounces of legacy. You move into the summer, going to 75. So we're pretty hot here, probably 95 and 75 roughly day night. Bump into that high label rate for Bermuda grass. That's a 20 ounce legacy. But the key to the whole program is we're staying on a 3-week application interval. We're not varying the application. It's not, you're spraying 4 weeks in the early spring and you're spraying 2 weeks in the summer. This is 3 weeks designed to maintain 3 weeks. So if you know you're going to spray every third Monday, then you go ahead and you schedule that in to spray every third Monday. And all you're doing is you're looking at those forecasted low temps to decide what rate you're going to go out with. Just like the POA program, again, watching the nighttime lows as they start to go, we start to get a later summer into early fall, bumping them back. You go bump back to 16. You can continue that 16 all the way until the lows drop below 55. You're not growing a whole lot of Bermuda grass under 55 anyway, especially in the fall, considering the amount of daylight that you have in that shift. So you're not going to have any issues with the bronzing, and then go ahead and schedule out that last application to where you're consistently around 55.
Hey, Kyle, what about newer varieties like of Bermuda, like Tiff Tough and Tahoma? Do you reduce those rates?
Tahoma hasn't seemed to be, the Tiff Tough for sure. I would bump it back another 25-30%. So potentially starting at 9 on the Tiff Tough. Tahoma, I haven't seen as much of response, specifically to Legacy. I know that there's been a little bit more response to Primo, but definitely with Tiff Tough, I'm starting guys at about 9 to 10, and then bumping up from there because it is a little bit more responsive. Growth expression's a little bit more aggressive, especially with the Primo portion. And just for everyone's awareness, at 16 ounces of Legacy, you're at 12 ounces of Cutlass and 6 ounces of Primo. So that's how that breaks down. All right.
Kyle, one more question, and then we will turn it over to Dan and Jared here in just a second. But how do you adjust your PGR strategy, during periods of extreme heat or inconsistent weather? When you're looking at the U.S. right now, I think there's, I read the other day, it's been the wettest in 34 years and the driest in 34 years, depending on where you are. So how do you adjust that strategy based on when there's challenges in the weather, as there are every year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to know your place, right? You got to know your golf course, you got to know your athletic field, and you've got to know what the growth looks like when conditions are optimal, and you have to know what the conditions are, or what the growth looks like when they're, for instance, dry. I've heard Bill Kreuzer, for example, say it a million times: dry conditions are a much better growth regulator than any PGR in the market. So there's no reason to be spraying PGRs when it's extreme drought and you're not growing any grass anyway. Just because it's on the calendar, it doesn't mean you need to spray it if it's not growing. Now, certainly if you've been dry and you're going into a raining period, you might want to think about maybe having a little PGR out there so you don't basically go from a drought scenario to absolutely rebound, blown out of the ground. So you do have to know, you've got to know your place. And then you've certainly got to be following the weather, which I know everyone does that's managing turf, but how that relates to the turf growth, and then effectively, what's that mean for my PGR program?
Appreciate that, Kyle. Dan and Jared, hey, appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us today, and looking forward to hearing from you. Dan, we'll start with you. Maybe tell us a little bit about the Sagamore Club, and then I'll hit you with a few questions as well.
Yeah, so Sagamore is located on the northeast side of Indianapolis, signature Jack Nicklaus property. This is actually my 20th year on site, not counting an internship, so kind of saw it from the ground, from not bare dirt, but a lot of the grassing and seeding avenues through the construction process, and then came here out of Purdue in 2006. So we're staying busy and trying to remember what day of the week it is. I think it's Wednesday, so I got that right. Yeah, that about sums up our course in a nutshell.
Thanks, Dan. Good to hear you're a Boilermaker. So I am too. So that's good news. Hey, when you're heading into a peak growth season, what problems are you trying to solve with a PGR program?
Yeah, so we just try to time it. I mean, the variety of bent grass we have on tees and fairways is Seaside 2, which isn't even being made anymore, and it's just slower to wake up from dormancy come springtime. So we're trying to catch it, before it goes crazy in the springtime. So we've got one application out year to date with Legacy, kind of the similar process on T-tops, just kind of allowing it to come out of dormancy, get growing, and then we're making our first application before it takes off too far. And Greens is a A1 bent grass variety. We're on Legacy on that as well. Similar deal, just kind of letting them wake up, kind of ease into the season. You hope you're out of the frost windows, but we've had Legacy apps on all short grass this year, and I think we've had 4 frosts. I think last week I talked to you guys. We had waited on frost to melt before we were spraying Legacy on greens. So I don't know if that's how they draw that up, but it worked out.
How do you adjust your program between the greens, fairways, and other areas?
Yeah, so I know someone mentioned that question to Kyle earlier about spiking with T-necks, and we actually last summer we had a stretch of about 6 or 8 weeks where like even the 10-ounce rate of Legacy. I mean, we go off 515 base 32. I mean, you're getting 6, 7, 8 days. So we spiked our Legacy on greens with another 4 ounces acre of T-necks. We've kind of played around. We started at 2, kind of like what Kyle mentioned. We've spiked that to 4. Tees and fairways, we kind of stay in a rotation off a schedule versus the growing degree days. So those kind of just stay on a biweekly application. So we're trying to, like, again, Kyle mentioned, a drought's your best PGR known to mankind. So we had 17 inches of rain through the middle of June, like the end of June last year. And then from August 1st to Halloween, I think we had 1.2 inches of rain and like 9 inches of ET. So we've had a stretch there of almost 3 months that we didn't even put Legacy on fairways because it was just so dry. So kind of adapting with Mother Nature. And if we see that rain kind of in the forecast when we're coming out of something like that, we'll get it back in the tank. But we were just simply leaving it out on fairways and tees and kept it on greens for that stretch of weather. So just rolling with the punches from Mother Nature and try to get ahead of the curve with rainfall and whatnot.
Dan, appreciate that. What changes did you see once you really dialed in your PGR program? And maybe walk us through that process too.
Yeah, so previous superintendent Gary Myers, he started the Legacy program, and I was trying to look back in my binder. I believe 2011 was our first year on Legacy. So now we're 15 years into our Legacy program, and I've never tweaked the short grass. We're on 16 ounces to the acre biweekly on fairways and tees, 10 ounces on greens. And generally it's a 2-week window. It just kind of revolves around GDDs and Mother Nature. And I don't measure clip yield. I kind of just make a feel for baskets and peek at it after mowing a green or two. But I know last week, we were mowing 21 greens, and I think we would dump after like the 15th hole. So I'm kind of old school, looking at the baskets, kind of know where you're at from a yield standpoint. And if we're regulated, then we know where we need to be. And that picture I sent in there, That was last summer, kind of during all those crazy rains. I mean, there were some weeks where we could only mow once a week because of all the rain, Memorial Day through like the latter part of June. So we were on 1 week schedules there for like 2 or 3 weeks. And if it wasn't for divots, we probably wouldn't have had the blower out there. So had the same thing again last week. 7 days in between mowings due to it, heavy rains, and you wouldn't tell. So
Awesome. That's great. And then last question for you. What would you tell someone who's on the fence about committing to a full PGR program?
yeah, I think it kind of revolves around what's your target. Is it limiting your POA population? Are you just trying to suppress growth to back off your mowing schedule? Since the price of fuel has gone up over the last 5 years and counting, we used to mow Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're Monday, Friday mowing now. And like I said, tightening up some divots, maybe some droppings from the mowers in some corners. But, our legacy program revolves around keeping the POA out. I mean, we're 23 years old and probably have less, I don't know, 0.25% of POA. Every spring before we get our legacy apps, all the members think we have a POA takeover because we got a bunch of cauliflower that stands out like a sore thumb on like the putting green and one green, and then that's it. So we've got 2 apps of legacy in now, and the color is great. It's limiting obviously your top growth, and that's our focal point with legacy, is just to really put a constriction on POA annual growth. And we're very happy with the fact that we're as old as we are, and there's just hardly any POA to be found. So I guess just what are you looking to achieve? Is it just about clippings, or are you trying to change your variety of grass from 20% POA to 0%? And then once you know what your end goal is, trying to select the right product from there.
Dan, thanks for that. And your course is right down the road from my house, so you have a beautiful course, and obviously you're doing a lot of things right. So thanks for that.
Thank you,
Jared. I will turn it over to you. Maybe tell us a little bit about Toscana, and also maybe tell us a little bit about the pictures we have here with Musketeer too.
Yeah, so just like Dan, Toscana is both golf courses here are Jack Nicklaus signature designs. So, I don't know if I got more or less bunkers than you do, Dan, but we got 244 of them out here. So I find it to be a blessing and a curse sometimes that Jack
I think you win.
He did. So, obviously it's a different growing situation than what Dan does. I am an overseeded property. So in these photos, you'll see there's a Bermuda grass base underneath that. And then we overseed with perennial ryegrass. The greens are Bermuda grass, overseeded with Poa trivialis. Some people put bent grass in their mix. I've done that on some years. I've gotten away from that a little bit. It's just too competitive with the Bermuda. But when I took over this property in 2020, it looked like we overseeded with POA, and you can kind of see that in the pictures. There was so much POA in the stand, whether it was fairways or rough. In particular, in the rough, it was really, really pronounced. And so I embraced the idea of getting on a musketeer program. And you can really see the reduction in the post stand. So the bottom photos here are in March 2021, and the top photos are from March 2024. If you saw the photos blown up full size, there's some POA in the top photos, but it's not seeding. It's very suppressed. It's very small, and I've found that each year that we've done this program now, I'm on year 5, I guess, of doing this, the Musketeer program. It's less and less POA that comes up every year. My ryegrass quality is better every year, and you end up with a cleaner product. Certainly, if you're a turf grass manager, you could come out with me and you would find POA out there. But for the everyday member and the everyday golfer, they don't see it. And what they see is a really clean, tidy product. And the color's great. I mean, it was, you can see on the bottom photos for a high-end private club, it was a very unacceptable amount of POA. And I've been really, really happy with our Musketeer program in getting that all cleaned up. And it's a really easy program. We spray Musketeer 20 ounces every 21 days. And I start that 8 weeks after I drop the perennial ryegrass overseed. So 8 weeks after seeding, and we basically continue that until the first or second week of March. And that at that point, I have to discontinue the Musketeer program because I need to start allowing the Bermuda to come out of dormancy, right? So if I continued this program all the way through, my Bermuda wouldn't have a chance to emerge as the ryegrass is declining in higher temperatures. So it's great though. It gets you through all of the what would be considered our peak season, that winter, those winter months when they're not up in Indianapolis, they're down here in the Southern California desert to play golf. And so it gets us through our whole peak season, and after that, you kind of allow that regulation to go away, so the Bermuda grass can come up and emerge from its winter's nap, and it works really good. Some guys will go even as early as 6 weeks after dropping the seed with the Musketeer app. I don't have the stomach for it. Their product is great too, though. I mean, I think it just depends on can you sleep at night as a superintendent being that aggressive on a brand new ryegrass plant? I can't. So I go 8 weeks because I can sleep well at night, and I know the product is great when I do it that way. So that's what we do.
Hey, thanks, Jared. How do you adjust your program between the greens, fairways, and other areas?
Well, again, because we are an overseeded environment, we kind of have several different programs throughout the year, right? So on greens, for instance, because it's an overseeded Poa trivialis, I don't want to put a more aggressive regulator. We don't put Legacy or Cutlass or Musketeer on the greens. It would wipe out that Poa, and we would have nothing but dormant Bermuda to play on, right? So on the greens, it's a mix of Anu and Trinexapac ethyl, and we spray that pretty regularly, every 2 weeks generally. It can be more or less depending on what the event calendar looks like, and it just kind of depends on what I'm seeing. I'm pretty old school, like Dan, I would say. So I check the clippings in the bucket. I roll a lot of putts, and I just kind of make my adjustments based on the speeds we're getting. And if I need to dial up or dial back my regulation, that's kind of what I do. My putter is the most useful tool in my cart for me for that. As far as our overseeded turf, I don't really, obviously with 20 ounces every 21 days, I don't need to do a whole lot different. So the winter months are really consistent here. I have had some years where if we get hit with a bunch of frosts, I will actually delay that application until we get out of the heavy frost window, because I don't want to be over-regulated with the amount of cart traffic we have. I don't want to be too regulated during those cold weeks. But generally, I mean, this year we had one frost all winter long. So, I mean, most winters, that's not really an issue. So you can kind of just set your program, and I don't want to say forget it, but it's really easy to hit the 20 ounces every 21 days through the winter months. And in the spring, when I get off of that program, we have to do some kind of unusual things, because I have to now allow one crop to come up from underneath the other crop. So I discontinue all regulation, and in fact, we start spraying gibberellic acid in the turf. So instead of regulating it and inhibiting it like we are all trying to do all the other times of the year, I'll spray gibberellic acid on the turf to try to encourage the Bermuda to come up as quickly as possible, so we don't have an unacceptable loss in turf quality, because I need basically one plant to take the place of the other seamlessly, so we have a playing surface the entire time, even though one crop is dying and the other one's just waking up. We need to reduce that transition time. And then after that, in the summer, it becomes just a Bermuda grass again, and I generally spray Trinexapac ethyl through the summer months and just adjust that again based on the conditions and how they what kind of environmental factors. As the humidity comes in, we obviously have to increase our our trinexapac ethyl, and we have to decrease our watering so we can kind of regulate it from both your soil moisture and your growth regulators at that point. So
Jared,
that was
hey,
my
thanks for
long-winded
thanks for talking us through that. And it's been cool to see how, Dan's program, he's using Legacy, Jared's using Musketeer, how they're using it in different areas of the country and the success that they're having. I wanted to ask a question came in, and Kyle, I might ask you this. This person is located in Northwest Florida with Champion Bermuda greens. They're trying to repair and grow back in. So far, they've been using a new EZ at 18 ounces, and every 3 weeks since March. They switched this morning to Primo at 2.5 ounces. Any advice going forward on trying to fill them in without over-regulating them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the 2.5 ounces of Primo moving forward is probably where you want to be. I wouldn't go any more than that. However, I don't know how much repair you're going to have. Certainly, you can start to mix in. Cutlass is labeled when you're actually growing grass. I typically don't recommend it until you get into June, July, where you're really growing grass. But that would be after a repair scenario. So, I guess what I'm saying is, right now, I think the Primo is all right to give you just a little bit of regulation without too much and allow it to repair. And then once you're really growing grass, I think you've got a lot more opportunities to not only improve the quality, but do a better job of growth suppression after you get them repaired. If you mix in about an ounce to ounce and a half of Cutlass with that Primo.
Appreciate that.
Jared, actually, that was the question. What do y'all do on your greens during the summer? Just tea?
Yeah, so I do just Trinexapac ethyl on the greens. I have done extremely low rates of Cutlass on the greens, and I'm talking less than an ounce of acre. I'll do like a half an ounce. And some guys, depending on the type of Bermuda you have. So for me, having Tiff Dwarf, it is very, very sensitive.
It is.
But other guys that have Mini Verde and some of the more aggressive varieties, they'll use Cutlass, and I'm starting to tinker around with that a little bit more. But yeah, generally just Trinexapac ethyl. But as far as, repairing, back to that question, I think using gibberellic acid with a new, actually, I would say is you don't want to get too carried away, because you shouldn't do like a gibberellic acid inhibitor plus straight gibberellic acid. But if you're trying to repair your Champion greens, I recommend like 2 ounces per acre of that with a little fertilizer, because it does give you some vertical growth, so your greens are going to slow a little bit down. But if you're really trying to repair a stand of turf grass, I would say, maybe just actually give it a little bit of a boost in terms of your gibberellic acid production. I use a new with it because I'm also trying to have people putt on it too at the same time. So we do like trying to reduce the top growth and encourage lateral growth. Kyle, you may have a better 1-2 punch, but I know for me, having to grow in Bermuda grass every spring through transition, that's really been a helpful tool for us.
No, I mean, I think your weakest regulator will be a new. So if you want just a little bit of growth suppression, I absolutely think, and then any boost certainly you can give it. It's long been practiced to mix a little nitrogen in with the PGR, just kind of get it bumped up a little bit. You obviously don't want to put too much in there, but yeah, certainly anything that you want to do to give it a little kick, I would recommend.
Well, it's amazing how quick an hour can go, and I think we could spend another hour. But Dan and Jared, I've got so many more questions for you, and I know maybe others have questions that are on the call that have come through. We'll definitely follow up with those as well. But if there are additional questions that you have that we haven't got answered today, I just want to talk about a PGR program. Our technical specialists are the best ones to reach out to. They'll be able to answer about any question and maybe work through some things with you as well. You can see those on the screen. And if you call one and need to talk to somebody else, we'll get you to the right person. So make sure you reach out to them or Kyle or Eric. Just wanted to highlight just a couple things as we close up here. We do have a program going on right now, a PGR program going on through June. So if you haven't, if you're really wanting to try one of our SEPRO PGRs, Cutlass Legacy or Musketeer, this is a really good time to do it. We have a 64-ounce bottle. It's great for trial size. And so, reach out to your technical specialist or visit sepro.com/PGR special. If you buy 2 64 ounces, you get a $150 gift card back. So a great way to trial Cutlass Legacy or Musketeer as well. Kyle did mention simplifying your PGR, the program. This is a great sheet. You can scan the QR code or ask or visit us at SEPRO or talk to your technical specialist, and they can work help. This is a great source to kind of determine, hey, what's best for me, Cutlass Legacy or Musketeer. Kind of helps you to answer a few questions and dials it in for you as well. And then lastly, this was just built here a few weeks ago. This is essentially Kyle Briscoe and Eric Bagitsky's brain in an app. It's an awesome tool to help you build your PGR program. So kind of ask you 4 or 5 questions and then get you a program. And it's a great tool to help you dial that in as well. So scan that QR code or visit the website there below and try it out. And as always, reach out to any of us here at SEPRO. We want to, help you build that program that works best for you. So once again, I know we went over just a bit today, and great conversations. Jared and Dan, thanks again for taking time out of your schedules to be a part of today. And I hope everyone has a great week and great summer ahead.